Okay, we're going to continue our literary terminology with parody. A parody is a composition that imitates the distinctive features of a serious piece of writing for some sort of comic purpose. If you've ever seen the movie Young Frankenstein, it's kind of a play. It's a funny version of the real Frankenstein. Vampires suck, for all the Twilight movies and things like that. But if you're familiar with Weird Al Yankovic, he is a master of the parody. Coolio put out a song called Gangster Paradise or Gangster's Paradise, and Weird Al Yankovic changed it a little bit to make it funny, and he made it Amish Paradise. And that's a parody, when you take something serious and you make it funny. A parable is a story that teaches a lesson. That's really important. If you're like a churchgoer or something like that, you probably know that Jesus spoke to the disciples and lots of other people in parables. He told little stories, but they had a deeper meaning. As a kid, I used to love Aesop's fables. They always told like little stories like the fox and the grapes or something like that, and he would, see these grapes hanging on the tree limb, and we were supposed to all learn a lesson from this particular story, and that's a parable. After parable is pastoral. Pastoral is a convention which kind of romanticizes or idealizes the world of the countryside and nature. Obviously, Henry David Thoreau in Walden, his famous work, was very pastoral literature. He always talked about how much nature was the end-all and be-all. So it sort of idealizes the world of nature. It says that cities stink and the country is better, and that's pastoral. After pastoral is persona. A persona is the fictional mask or voice an author may adopt to tell a story. So it's like when you want to tell a funny story to somebody and you kind of put a funny voice on to go with the characters, you are adopting the persona of that particular character. After persona is personification. That's one of my favorites. Look at that little word right in the literary term right there, person. So personification is when you give human qualities to something that doesn't have them. All right. It says here a figure of speech in which an inanimate object, that's like an object that doesn't move, and you give it a human feature. So for instance, if I said, the sun smiled down on all the people. The sun doesn't really smile. That's a human quality or a human feature. But when it's nice and warm out, the sun certainly feels like it's smiling. Or the pencil danced across the page. Pencils don't dance. They don't move. They're inanimate. However, when you're writing on your piece of paper, it almost seems as though the pencil is dancing across the page. So personification is giving human qualities to something that normally does not have them. Perspective. Well, in painting it's one thing, but in literature, the technique of explaining something from more than one point of view in order to allow the reader to experience a deeper and broader concept of the character, topic, or background, etc. I like to think of perspective on how you look at things. You know that different people look at things differently. We need to appreciate others' perspectives sometimes. So right now you might be sitting in a desk right now, and that's one perspective. But now jump up and stand up. Well, don't do it. But if you were to jump up and stand up on your desk, you'd have a different perspective. You could look at the classroom from a different point of view, from a different perspective. Which leads us to point of view. That's the vantage point, or the perspective from which a story is told. Now, you got a couple of different kinds of point of view here, so let's look at a few of them right now. First one is, of course, first person. This is when one of the characters is telling the story. You're getting the story from their point of view. So once upon a time, I went to the store and I saw this, that, or the other thing. If I am telling the story, or if one character is telling the story, that's point of view, the first person. You got to appreciate the fact, though, that this might be a biased view since it's only from one person's perspective. Continuing with point of view, this is the third person omniscient. Omniscient is a great vocabulary word that means sort of all-knowing. When you have a third-person omniscient point of view, you get everything. You know all the characters' thoughts. You see everything from sort of like a bird's eye or point of view. The narrator is able to tell the story from all perspectives and can tell anything we need to know to understand the story. They move across space and time and all kinds of crazy stuff because they know everything. That's a third-person omniscient. Continuing on, limited omniscient third person is, although the author is an all-knowing kind of person, the author limits the point of view to the experience and perception of only one character in the story. So you're not getting everybody's perception, you're getting everything about one person's. So it does limit, that seems like an oxymoron there, limited, omniscient, but it just sort of holds it back just a little bit. Continuing on, point of view objective is the author presents an external action as if it were being filmed by a movie camera. So I saw an interesting thing about this kind of actually, that this person filmed a movie using security cameras. You know, so like if you were walking through the mall or something like that, the security cameras would tell the story. The reader knows nothing about the characters' inner thoughts and feelings. They can only understand the characters and the events by what they hear and what the characters are doing. So you don't know any of their thoughts, but you can judge them by their actions. Prolepsis is a very strange one, not a very popular one, but it's a figure of speech that creates sort of anticipation. You're probably familiar with the flash back at this point, but you might not be familiar with the flash forward. Flash forward is when you, instead of flashing back, you flash forward to some future event. So prolepsis assumes that that sort of future event already happens. So if you're reading a story and the kid in the third row looks at the pretty girl in the fourth row, and imagines them married already, you can see the future before it actually happens, and that's prolepsis. Puns are pretty punny and funny too. It's a play on words that have similar sound, but they have different meanings. Okay, one of my favorite ones is from Mercutio, and that's from Romeo and Juliet. You already know him as well. When he says, "Tomorrow you shall find me a grave man." Grave man has a double meaning. All right, it was a serious situation because he just got stabbed, obviously. So grave means serious, but it also alludes to his imminent death, as in, I will be in the grave tomorrow, and that's a pun. Can you think of a pun? Go ahead, do it right now. All right, moving on. Realism. Obviously, real is right in the world. All right, so literature that reflects reality and real life is realism. So, I don't know if you probably, lots of things wouldn't count as realistic, but you could probably think of a lot of stories that do. Maybe we'll read this year The Chocolate War, and that's a very realistic novel, or a separate piece. Stuff that could actually happen in reality is realism. And that's it. I stop at realism. Thank you for listening. You can rewind this tape if you'd like and see something else too. So have a very nice day.